All right, another minute has passed. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to participate in this Lunch and Learn with our amazing and exciting host, Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey. Please ignore the 7-month-year-old who's in the background. Um, we're working on her etiquette skills. We're working on it. But I'm so excited to have Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey on this conference call today. And just to kind of give an idea of what we all can expect, she's going to share her story of how she got to the position that she's in now. And then we do have a few questions that we have crafted for her to answer that will hopefully facilitate conversation and discussion throughout the presentation. And if there is time, we will open it up for Q&A that we will ask for everyone to place in the chat. So everyone is automatically placed on mute because we want to make sure that we can hear the words of wisdom from the sheriff. And there's no interruption in that regard. And I'm going to stop talking because every minute counts. And I know we all are eager to hear from Miss McGuffey and hear her story as I am. I'm so excited. I'm trying to keep myself in my skin right now. So yes, so I will turn it over to you, Sheriff McGuffey, and just share with us your story, and then we'll lead into the questions we have prepared for you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thanks for your introduction. Great to meet you. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. I really appreciate your support. It means a lot, not only to me, but to the criminal justice system, that you all are so interested in how we move forward, particularly in this day and age where we have strife. I mean, we have a lot of strife and anxiety and so forth surrounding what we are doing in the criminal justice system and what we're not doing in the criminal justice system. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey, and I've been the sheriff for 4 months now. It feels great. I really enjoy the job. It is absolutely everything and more that I thought it would be. But I'll tell you how I started out. I was a young girl. I was an at-risk kid, and I lived in an at-risk neighborhood. I had a single mom, myself and my 2 sisters, without any outside help. And, quite frankly, we struggled. Mom worked very, very hard to provide us with the basics and so forth. And while we were, not very wealthy, I do like people to know that we were spiritually rich, spiritually and emotionally rich. And I think those are things that mom did for us and helped us with, with getting on in life. So when I was 14, I decided I want to be a police officer. So I told my uncle, Nick, who himself was a former retired police officer, and he promptly told me right then, oh, well, that's absolutely not going to happen. That's impossible because women can't be police officers. And, it just isn't allowed. And, he was right. I mean, at that time, and I was 14, so that would have been, the late 60s, early 70s, maybe, that women couldn't be out on patrol. We weren't allowed in the cars. We weren't allowed to be on patrol. It wasn't a job that women could legally even apply for. So, as he was explaining all that to me, of course, I, as my 14-year-old self, I was sitting there planning exactly how I was going to do it. Well, I'm going to get that done. I don't know how it's going to get done, but it's going to. And so, I do credit the adults that surrounded me. Our neighbors helped us. Cincinnati Recreation provided activities and, sports for me to participate in. And, my teachers played a big part in my life and certainly me and really helped me to reach my potential. So I enrolled in University of Cincinnati, and I attended University of Cincinnati in the criminal justice program. And in fact, a few years into that program, the criminal justice program, is when women were actually allowed to go out and be on the street. were allowed to be in the patrol cars as a peer to their male counterparts. And so who I was I was one of those first women in that wave, the wave of women that came out into that arena, that male dominated arena. And, you know, it was challenging. And there were lots of questions about whether we could do our jobs, were we strong, et cetera. And of course, I have not just me, but many of the women that pioneered and came out there in those times, in that era, were stressed and pressed and have stories of such. So I started with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and you know, I spent 33 years in the Sheriff's Office. So I went through every facet of our Sheriff's Office here in Hamilton County, and we have quite a large Sheriff's Office, some 900 uniformed deputies, and we have the third largest jail in the state of Ohio with 1,400 prisoners. I spent the bulk of my career in the jail. In this arena, in the Sheriff's Office, you come in through the jail. That's how you enter our department. And I stayed in the jail for a very long time. However, I did, during my career, do lots of various things and wear lots of different hats, and did a little bit of road patrol work, a little bit of electronic monitoring work, you know, and I was the commander of the Honor Guard. I was the commander of the Corrections Jail Academy for many, many years. I'm a very accomplished self-defense instructor and have taught self-defense for, I bet 20 years. And, you know, all that time, I was also gaining rank. So I gained in rank to sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and then major, which was the highest ranking woman in the history of the Sheriff's Office. And, you know, as the major of jail and court services, I had a big job and lots of responsibility. And I knew immediately upon taking that position that I needed to change our jail. I needed to bring criminal justice reform to our jail, because what I had observed all those years is our justice system is a 1950s model, and particularly here in our jail it is. And what I mean by that is, you know, people are coming into our facility incarcerated and can be incarcerated for weeks, months, a year, more than a year. And when their time is up, by now, okay, please remember that when you come into jail, you lose your car, you can lose contact with your family, you can lose your job, your housing. Now you have a record that prevents you from employment, and all these things happen to you that are negative takeaways, right? And it costs a lot of money to navigate the system. So after you spend 2 weeks, however long you're going to be in jail, we open the door and we say, okay, now go out and do better with less. And you know that it just never made sense to me. And I watched that happen more times than I can recount. So, you know, as the major, I began to pay attention to lots of things. First of all, the reform. And secondly, there became an issue that I was quite concerned about. And that was that our Internal Affairs Department was not holding officers, our new Internal Affairs Department was not holding officers accountable for excessive use of force in our jail. And the excessive use of forces resulted in some very serious injuries to our prisoners. And, you know, I complained about that. Of course I did. I continued to talk about the fact that it was wrong. Certain events continued to happen. I was told to stand down. I was told to go with the flow. I was told to be quiet. And I didn't do any of those things, because that's not in my nature. This job, this uniform, my responsibilities, they're important to me. And so I continued to speak up. Well, eventually, I was called into the sheriff's office after 4 years of being the major. I was called into the sheriff's office and told I'm fired. And that meeting took 15 minutes. So in 15 minutes, my entire 33-year career my stellar career. No discipline, all the things I've achieved are gone. And I was told when I said, why are you firing me? I was told, well, you're hostile. Internal Affairs has decided that you're too hostile. And they talked about some of the ways that they thought I hadn't handled things well. So I walked out of that office and wow, it was pretty devastating. I mean, you can imagine. So they created a report, which they refused to give me, by the way. But I insisted on it, got the report. I then went, because I was threatened that if I did not take a demotion, they were offering me a demotion that was ridiculous. It was ridiculous in nature, that I'd be out of uniform, that it was awful. And so, of course, I said no. And then they said, well, if you don't take this demotion, we are going to give this report to the Cincinnati Enquirer. And I didn't even know what was in the report. So I said, all right, well, I need it. So I insisted. I got the report. And what I did was I left the office. That was May 5th, 2017. I left the office, of course, hired an attorney, and in the next couple of days met with the Cincinnati Enquirer and gave him the report myself. I felt that was important, because when people threaten you with something, it's not right. And I wasn't going to be threatened at any point in my career. I knew I had done the right things. So at any rate, long story short, I filed a federal lawsuit for discrimination. And in 3 years, in that first year, I decided to run for sheriff. And so now if we fast forward to 2021, I was elected sheriff, and the lawsuit was settled in my favor. And as an aside, one of the officers who I had accused of some very egregious excessive use of force was actually charged and prosecuted by the FBI. So at any rate, all of those things came about, and it was a climb. I mean, and during my career, I faced lots of different hardships, because people say, well, gosh, how did you manage that? I mean, how did you stay so strong? Well, I stayed strong because I had strong people around me, in particular, strong women who helped me. My mentor, Mary Carol Melton, she called me one day after, about 6 or 8 months of me just languishing in some bad mental state of mind. And she just simply said to me, hey, you know what? You got to get up. You got to get going. I mean, there's a lot to do. And you just can't hold up here and not do things. And that did motivate me. It got me going, and she encouraged me to run for sheriff ultimately, and that's what happened. I'm gay, and I had a lovely partner, my wife, who encouraged me, stuck by me the entire time, my family, my friends, my colleagues. I mean, it really was tremendous. And I'm so fortunate to have had those people in my life. And, but having said that, coming into a sheriff's department or any police department in a male-dominated world as a woman, as a gay woman, who I was all my life, was difficult. And, people I like people to know some of the things that happened. Just to give you an example, I was working as a sergeant, and a lieutenant came over to me one night. We were on, evening shift. And he said, hey, I want you to come with me. We're going to go over and meet this officer who is cutting off your radio transmissions. And I was shocked by that. I was, wow, because, we carry a radio. It's our safety. I mean, you have to have that radio on. That's your lifeline to getting people to the location, to finding you, to helping you, and those kinds of things when you need it. And here, this guy, apparently, every time I keyed up my mic, he was cutting it off so no one could hear me. And I didn't even know that was going on. So we walked over, and I thought to myself, I wonder who this is. You know, I'm trying to think what guy I've had some, you know, run in with. And we get in there, and that officer walked in the room, and I had never seen him before in my life. I didn't know him at all. And I was shocked. And I thought, why would you don't even know me? And it really boiled down to the fact that he heard a woman's voice on the radio as a sergeant woman, and he decided he didn't like that. So he was just cutting off my transmissions. And, you know, one of the things I like to note to people about that incident is that he was never disciplined. There was never any documentation of it. He was never disciplined. He was just told face to face, knock it off. And, you know, that's one story that I have. And I guarantee you that the women that came out with me have stories like that. So, you know, when you work in uniform, particularly when we came on, there were hardships that you faced. But I will say this, it's been the most rewarding job that I've ever had. I love this job. I've loved every day I've ever worked in uniform. You know, I made a comment that the media kind of made a big deal out of, which kind of surprised me, because they were talking to me about, well, how's it feel to be back? And wow, you were gone for almost 4 years and so forth. And I said, well, one of the things is I miss the inmates. I miss the prisoners. And man, the reporter was just floored by that. And they were like, what? You miss the people who are incarcerated? I said, well, sure I do. You know, they're a part of my work. I mean, you know, I know people. I know them. I'm working to help them. I have relationships, professional relationships with people in this business. And it was interesting to me that, you know, kind of the perception out there is, why would you care about someone who's incarcerated? And, you know, I read one of the, you know, Kyla Woods, who's our great public information officer, gave me some Q questions. And one of them was, you know, what did I learn in my criminal justice years? And that's what I learned, is that you can care about, and you should care about people who are incarcerated, and you should create relationships with those people. And so you know, that came to mind when I thought about that. But my career's been great. I'm super happy to be the sheriff. I have surrounded our command table with great men and women, and very importantly, intentional diversity, which is there's no way to overstate how important diversity is to the criminal justice system. It is absolutely a must. It's one of the reasons we have fallen so far behind, is because, you know, there are certain systems in criminal justice that maintain that male white hierarchy, and others are not allowed in. And I think I know that has hurt us moving forward with our communities and what we want to do with criminal justice reform. So that's my platform. You know, that's who I am, and I am so happy to be here with you. And I'll answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much for that. That was so amazing to me. I just find it interesting that you were called hostile when you just spoke your mind. Yes. I don't think I'll ever forget that. That's very interesting. So you answered the first question, right? Mm-hmm. So we can go ahead and move on to the second question, and hopefully that will give some more time for people to chime in to ask questions. So our second question that we have for you is, how do you feel women have evolved in law enforcement over the years?
And that is a great question. women have become stronger. We have become stronger. We have become better represented. We have begun to understand what it's like to be included in those decision-making positions. And one of the things that has made us stronger is the fact that truly we have had to face difficulties. Sometimes difficulties that the men would never face. And we've had to walk that fine line of learning how to be a commander, and whether some of those criticisms that get lobbed at you that are, and a lot of them are very typical. You're not feminine enough. Sometimes there are men in this business that, as a commander, you come to the table to tell them what's up, right? Your subordinates, and they want you to bring cupcakes or cookies, or it's like, that's not me, guys. I'm the commander. That's who I am, and I'm coming to this meeting for business reasons, and here's the business. And somebody asked me, particularly in my lawsuit, as we were going through depositions, someone had quoted me as saying that I was I referred to myself as a tough supervisor, I think is kind of the way I said it. And so the attorney for the other side said, well, what's that supposed to mean? You're a tough supervisor. I mean, wow, you're a hard supervisor. And I said, yes, I expect people to show up for work. I expect people to be on time. I expect people to produce a product, and I expect them to be ethically and morally correct in their actions. And I expect men to listen to me when I talk. And I don't know that she quite anticipated that answer. It seemed to take her off guard a little bit. But just the mere fact that a woman cannot refer to herself as a hard boss. You can't, right? I mean, not in some people's eyes, as you can see. So that's what I think has changed for women in this business, is we are proving that you can be a hard boss and a good boss, and you can be a woman and be all those things.
Thank you so much for that. So the third question is, how can women compete and become more equitable in a predominantly male industry?
That is a great question as well. I think that a part of it, and I can speak for this industry in the law enforcement arena, one of the things that I coach young women to do is keep yourself in shape, get in good physical condition. The job is very physically taxing and emotionally taxing. And, the best condition you can come in the beginning of your career is going to help you throughout your career. I encourage women to have a fitness regimen that they embrace. And I encourage women in this male industry to, to keep your wits about you, right? And understand that it's not fair. It's not going to be fair. When you are in this uniform and you're competing with men for these positions, and the competition can be tough, be smart, right? Do your homework, and in that way, keep an eye on your goal. And one of the things that have helped me in this career is to focus. And when I say that, I mean this. When I was a young girl, I learned early on in sports. I was on a track team, and I remember the coach, and this is a lesson I carry with me even now, saying, look, when you're running a race, don't look behind you. Don't look beside you. Don't look to see who's gaining on you. Because you know what that does? That takes you off your game, and that takes you off your focus. So, if you're focused on the finish line, that's what you're looking at. So I don't, as I've moved along in this career, I don't pay attention to some of the things the men say about me. I don't pay attention to the things the men obstacles they throw in my way, or, the way they try to get under your skin with rumors and things like that. I just, my goal is to be at that end point, and that's exactly where I'm going. And so I do coach women that you have to be, a little single-minded as you work in this male-dominated field, because there are a number of guys in particular who'll try to pull you off your game. They just will. And so I encourage you to understand your goals upon entering, and know where you're going. And remember that you've got to be physically, mentally, and spiritually fit to do this job well for lots of years.
That is great. Great feedback. And then we have one more question before we opening up to everyone, to the participants. So in the midst of the racial protests and rallies due to the racial issues that we've seen in 2020, from your perspective, what hope can we all take away from the demonstrations?
The hope we can take away is that it's working. The hope we can take away is that people bringing their voices out into the open, protests that include not just Black people and brown people, but white people and allies and all the people who believe in true civil rights and people who believe in equal treatment and fairness. Those people, and I talked to many of them because I attended the protests. And in fact, it's interesting that my opponent who ran against me, he criticized me for attending the protest, and tried to make a great deal out of how horrible that was, that I was down here with the protesters talking and walking around. And, I think he thought that he could make that look like a negative, but it's not. And and here's why I think we've gained ground, because enough people saw that for what it was, a positive. Your law enforcement leaders need to be out there with people who are not happy, with people who haven't been treated well, with people who need to benefit from bringing on diversity and people from all walks of life. And that, I think, is certainly a consequence of people coming together. And I know people paid a price. Here's the other thing, you pay a price when you do those things, because there were a number of people arrested. All right. Now, I wasn't there, right or wrong, when those people were arrested. But I can tell you, when they came to jail, they spent the night outside. They spent the night out in that Sallyport area without proper care, without proper food, water, any of those things. And I was not here, or I promise you that would have not. So those people pay a price for making their voices heard. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing people paying attention, and people, and including myself, I'm learning lessons as we move forward, and I'm having interactions with people of diversity who educate me. And that has to continue across the spectrum.
Thank you so much for that. So now we're going to open it up to questions, and Gage is going to go ahead and read them off to you.
Sure.
Absolutely. So far there's only just one question. If you do have a question for the sheriff, please make sure to go put those in there. The first one, though, is from a nice woman named Tiffany. So, you have spoken of excessive use of force to respond to incidents. This is an issue that continues to occur decade after decade. I work with youth, and we have attempted. By the way, if you're not on mute, please go and mute yourself. There's a lot of feedback on the screen. But the question is, what suggestions or opportunities do you foresee to provide hope for youth and trying to minimize use of force and better relations with law enforcement?
So, the question being, what opportunities do we have with if I understand you correctly, with the youth, to limit excessive use of force or use of force incidents. Okay, and I think first of all, it does start with paying attention to young people. I know that from my own upbringing, from my own neighborhood. It was important to me to have adults who intervene, sometimes even when I didn't want their advice. You know, they gave me their advice. And that was important because ultimately I internalized those messages, those positive messages. But as well, we have right now in law enforcement, as an example, we have what's called ABLE training that our department is championing. This is brand new stuff. It's I went to the class myself, as did Kyla Woods, our public information officer, as did many in our command staff. We will all go to it before it's all over, the entire department. And it is called ABLE training, Active Bystander for Law Enforcement Training, which means, you know, it's a bystandership, which means you are going to be empowered to intervene when you see something going wrong, when you see an officer losing their temper, one being inappropriate. And that's such an important training to give people the permission to intervene with a sergeant or a lieutenant or even a captain who you don't think is acting appropriately. Those are, and in that training, I have the ABLE pin on. I don't know if you can see it, but it's this round pin. I went to the class. It's 8 hours of interactive training. It was super. Every one of the officers in this sheriff's office and support staff, operations staff will be wearing this pin as they move through that program. You're on mute, I think. I don't think
Yes,
I can.
I
There you are.
I was
Okay.
following my own suggestion, you know, the mute. So
Yeah.
how can we get more how can we get more law enforcement personnel like you involved in the Hamilton County justice system?
Well, we can open our minds. We can support that effort. You know, people who are citizens and people who frequent the criminal justice arena for whatever reason, whether you're an attorney, whether you know, whoever you are in the system, and there's lots of jobs in the system, you can support that diversity that comes about in the system by encouraging women, by encouraging Black and brown people to enter this. And that's what we're doing here. We're encouraging intentional diversity to enter this sheriff's department, this completely male dominated, oftentimes completely white organization, and bring your view and bring your expertise to the table to help all of us. You know, one of the things that that people can do is realize that all of us can struggle in one way or another. And it really is important because sometimes we can fail. I mean, we can. In this business, you can fail. You can make the wrong decision. But it's important for the public to understand that as long as you're trying and as long as you're striving to learn and do better, the public needs to say, yes, we'll get behind you. And we in uniform need to prove that. And that's what we're doing here is proving that. And in saying that, I'm just going to tell you this. I think we're getting ready to hire our first transgender sheriff's deputy. And that is going to be a milestone for this department. And quite frankly, it's going to be something that other departments refuse to do. Not afraid of it. We embrace it. And we think it will make us better.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So next question is, and this sounds more of as just a general question, I guess.
Sure.
As a woman and being, you know, discriminated against in the past, those individuals who have painted you in that way because of the power play associated with it, what do you do in that case? This person has asked, like, do you quit or stay and fight? It seems like you've obviously stayed and fought, but we'd like
Right.
to hear from you.
Yeah. Um, I, of course, am always going to encourage people to fight. I'm going to encourage people to stand their ground. I should probably say it that way. Stand your ground. Don't stand down. But do remember this. There are lots of ways to stand your ground. You know, I did take the hard road. I did climb the steep climb. But there are some ways that people heal and get about their lives and make the situation better by doing other things and speaking out in other ways. So, you know, as I said, was fortunate that I was able to prevail in this battle, and it really was a battle. But you really have to know that you're willing to withstand every bruise and bump that you're going to get, because you're going to get a lot of them. You know, you don't step into the arena of a fight and not come out with some bumps, bruises, and cuts yourself, even when you win. So that's just the way I feel about it. But yeah, I'm a fighter. And in that way, I want to be very clear. I've never started a fight in my life. Okay. Ever. But I don't believe I can remember a time I ever walked away from one. So.
Thank you. The next question: how are you eliminating excessive use of force against inmates currently occurring in jail?
Well, we are scrutinizing every use of force report. We're scrutinizing every report regarding a taser. When people have a complaint, we are reading those complaints. We're following up on those complaints. What we've created here in the sheriff's office is a community affairs division, and that is headed up by Major Jacqueline Reed, who, by the way, is the first African-American woman to hold the rank of major in our department. She is absolutely fabulous. I've worked 30 years with her. She understands what it's like, and perhaps sometime y'all should host her. She has a tremendous story, but at any rate, she's heading up our community affairs division, and in that way, she's following up. She's following up in detail on all of those issues I talked about, and then, most importantly, we are holding officers accountable, held accountable, period. I don't care who you know. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care about that. You will be held accountable for your actions.
Thank you so much. I think this might be one of the last questions. Somebody else just sent another one in. What are some other career options in the criminal justice field aside from law enforcement?
Oh, yeah, and that is a great question too. You know, law enforcement is not just, and if you read the article that was written, that was so well written about my, career and me being the sheriff, one of the things I noted is the criminal justice system is much bigger than law enforcement. In fact, the bulk of it is not law enforcement. There are so many avenues in the criminal justice system for people to work in and succeed in and make a real difference. And, there is probation, parole, all manner of different jobs in the incarceration arena. If you're going to champion women's rights and the rights of Black and brown people and diversity, I mean, all of those things link to criminal justice. And it's what I learned at UC. I was in my 20s, mid 20s, and I had, interestingly enough, I had never been exposed to the fact that there was real racial strife that affected people in such negative ways and such hatred out in the world until a criminal justice professor, Joanne Belknap, happened to be a professor of mine, until she showed us, and that was taking courses from her opened my eyes to the fact that it's also about how you treat people. I mean, she showed the film, if anybody's ever seen it, the Eyes on the Prize. And that was my first exposure to the fact that, oh my God, there are people out there that actually hate people for no reason, for no real reason other than the color of their skin. I was educated, and I think that's an important education for people to have. And I am sorry to say that didn't even happen until I was in my mid-20s. But that's what I ask people to do, is educate yourself and find those ways to understand.
Wonderful. There's one other question, and that, can you discuss how or what you're already doing to make a difference for women inmates, specifically ones who are pregnant or might be young mothers?
Wow, yeah. And boy, that's a complicated arena. Um, the women that come to jail are very stressed and in some very, very bad situations. Typically, most of those women have endured sexual assault in some way in their life. They have been trafficked. They've just had so many different hardships, health issues because of that, homelessness, etc. And when they are pregnant, we in the jail, I mean, we try to do our very best for them. I mean, and we want them to stay here. I did know a judge one time that actually held a woman in jail, I think, longer than probably she would have sentenced her, so that that woman would not be out using drugs while she was pregnant. And the woman did have the baby while she was incarcerated. But yeah, we pay very close attention to those women. There's some new legislation out regarding restraints of women who are pregnant and so forth that we're adhering to, which is good legislation. And it's a difficult thing. We're bringing in services. I have a heroin recovery pod that's getting ready to get up and running. We bring in women helping women, and also, most importantly, Planned Parenthood is super important to the women who are incarcerated here.
Great, thank you. I keep saying last question, and people keep saying more, So,
Sure.
what do our new college graduates need to know about going into this industry? What are some good, maybe entry-level positions that maybe a lot of people don't think of that might be a good start for a college graduate?
Well, one of the best entry-level positions is coming down and working in the jail, honestly. Coming down and working in our jail as a corrections officer, I recommend it. There are people who shy away from it. Lots of young people who I hear them say, "Oh, I don't want to work in a jail." But here's what happens is you come down here and work in our jail, you are starting off in an arena that will hone every skill you ever need to be successful in this business. Whether you go on to law enforcement, to be an elected official, to work in the housing arena, wherever you go, your initial contact in the criminal justice system as a uniformed correctional officer or an operational staff person here in the jail is invaluable to you. What you will learn here are, as I talked about, all those skills and all of that expertise, but you'll also learn about the system and the human element of the criminal justice system. Our officers, our deputies that are out on the street, all have to come through the jail. That's their very first stop here in the sheriff's office. And it is my firm belief, and I know it's why we have very few issues out on our road patrol with our men and women out there, because they have learned how to come into a stressful environment, be one person who is commanding some 76 people. You just walk in the pod and you command. And once you learn those skills, it serves you across the board anywhere you go.
Wonderful. Are there any last questions for the sheriff? Thank you so much for being here today.
Sure, absolutely. And I would like to end with encouraging people to join the sheriff's office. we're always looking for good people who want to do more with your life, and who want to have a good, engaging career with, I'm going to add this, with really great command staff. Okay. So I want to leave you with that, and wow, I really appreciate you hosting me. Very nice.
Oh, I missed one question. I missed a question.
Sure.
Do you consider that incarcerated men are undergoing high stress, as high stress women? Is there a reason? Is that trauma less in certain areas for men compared to women? So,
There's no difference in the stress level. It's all high stress across the board. Men have different stresses than women, different high stresses. As I talked about the women and some of the hardships that land them in jail, men tend to struggle with other things. You know, it is important for men, and this is just, my opinion. It is important for men to be productive in their lives and to feel productive and to feel that they make a difference, for the people that depend on them, their children, their relationships, their parents, etc. And if men are not, if men opportunities provided opportunities because of their race, their color, their origins, and just in general that they've struggled in life a bit, we are doing them a great disservice. And what I see in the male population here is, quite honestly, a great deal of depression, a great deal of depression and remorse, hopelessness, and that it hurts. It hurts to see that. And that's what we're working on. We're bringing in programming, and that's what we want men who are incarcerated to embrace. Move along. You can do better. You will do better. And that's, it's just a little difference I see in the populations.
thank you so much. I think that is all now. Are there any other questions? If not, Danielle, Nicole, I'm sorry, I give the floor back to you, not Danielle. Nicole, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. It's definitely Nicole, but Danielle is fine. That's a pretty name. But that's fine. Well, thank you very much again, Sheriff McGuffey, for sharing your story.
Sure.
I definitely can't speak for everyone, but I think I'm okay to say, like, you definitely touched some nerves here today in a good way. My biggest takeaway that I will never forget is a woman speaks up, she's considered hostile, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. If that moves to moving mountains the way you've done and making true change for the better, I'm okay with being called hostile. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm still trying to keep myself in my skin, because I've admired you from afar, just from the stories that I've read and from what I've seen in the media. And I'm just so glad that you had the opportunity today to just really state what really happened, and just also just sharing your story is definitely inspiring to me, for sure. So this conference, is Lunch and Learn, will be recorded, and it'll be, once we have it captioned, it'll be available for those to watch and share with students, because I do think some of our students can actually get some good things out of this as well. And thank you for keeping us safe. Thank you so much for all that you do. So
thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much.
No problem. Well, everyone, have a great day and weekend. And again, thank you very much, Jerry.